Hey guys, welcome to day number 6 of the shoulder series. So today we're going to talk about the core as promised. But I want to reiterate again that there is a reason that we have the series set up properly. Everybody loves to jump into these kinds of exercises. They're a little more complicated. They're not as sexy, but or they are more sexy. The other ones are not. But there's a reason that we started with shoulder mobility. Of course, if you're going overhead, this is pretty much a shoulder dominant exercise, so you need to make sure the joint works properly. If the joint does not work properly for the movement you are doing, there is no point in doing all these corrective exercises and crazy things. You just need to make sure you have full range of motion first. Then we need to make sure we control that range of motion, and then from there we can work on a little more complex things. Today we're putting together kind of the core and the shoulder. Your core is your stabilization. It is your anchor. It is what makes sure that you're able to do things that you need to. We always explain this as proximal stability before distal mobility. So we need to make sure we stabilize here. The way that we kind of explain that is you need to have, you have two bowls essentially. That's your pelvis here, it's kind of like a bowl here, and your rib cage here, it's a bowl like this. If you are not having the bowls kind of turn in towards each other stacked, which a lot of the times I see this with overhead pressing, you will end up kind of doing something like this as you go to press overhead. That rib cage is flared and the bottom bowl is kind of dumped out. This is not very good because for a couple different reasons. One, you end up jamming things back here. That's uncomfortable. Hello, back pain with overhead pressing. Two, this is your anchor for your shoulder. If you are not in this position, look at where my shoulder is now. Usually we end up doing something like this or something wonky, and that predisposes the shoulder to having issues. And three, your shoulder, I explained, your scapula back here is kind of the anchor for your shoulder. The anchor for that is actually making sure your rib cage is in a good position. If it's not, your stabilizer muscles of your scapula are not going to be able to do what they need to because they're not going to be in the proper position. So all those are really important for making sure that we stay overhead. Now with that being said, we want to make sure we don't overdo it and kind of tuck and round too much because that's tilting them towards each other and that's also not in a good position. So you want them stacked nice and tight on top of each other. That's the first thing. Position is everything. The second thing you want to do is think about a 360-degree expansion. When we think about kind of tightening the core, we either suck in, which is not going to do anything for you, or two, we just think about pressurizing in the front. But your core is 360 degrees. It needs to be pressurized in all of those spots. So you want to think about tightening all these muscles and then kind of breathing into them and keeping it that way, all the way into the back, the sides, the front, the top, and the bottom. Those all work together to stabilize your core. As you do movements, that's what you want to think about. Now, for the exercise that we're going to do, it's going to be called kettlebell pullovers, or you can use a dumbbell as well. It doesn't matter. The point is going to be keeping this nice and tight while going into some shoulder flexion. So first, assume the position. I'm gonna lay on my back here, and I'm going to put my feet up against the wall at about a 90-90 position here. This is gonna do a couple things. One, allow you to drive the pressure here to really get the core activation, but it's to really make sure that you can feel that you are in a proper position with your pelvis and your rib cage. So that means you should feel your back on the ground, nice and flat. From here, you're gonna take the kettlebell, grab it by the handles here, and start straight up towards the ceiling. Take a deep breath, pressurize in 360 degrees, just like we were talking about. As you do that, you're going to keep that pressure, push into the wall, and slowly go into shoulder flexion. Now, you're gonna go and hold for a couple seconds and pull back over. Notice I only went to the position that I could control. This kettlebell is just a little heavy for me to go all the way back, but I did not go into a position that allowed my back to arch. So what would look incorrect is going back, letting your back arch, and then coming back here. That allowed my back to come off the ground and my rib cage and pelvis became disconnected. So once again, I'll show you another thing that I see commonly. We're good all the way back, but then as we go to pull up, oh, there goes my back. So both of those can happen. So your job is to pay attention And this is why I tell everybody to go to the end range and hold for a couple seconds before you pull back. This should feel like a good, strong ab exercise because that's what you're focusing on. And then I want you to just lower as far as you can. You'll probably get more range of motion as you do this several times, but just do as much as you can control. It's not about getting a huge range of motion. It's about getting through the range of motion and controlling all of it. Again, controlling your movement is everything, and that's kind of the purpose of this. So with that being said, that's day number 6. For as far as prescription goes, it's going to highly depend on what you can tolerate. Start light. This is not a heavy strength exercise. This is a control exercise, making sure we're stabilizing here. So you want to start light, hold at the end for a couple seconds, and I would start just seeing if you can get to 10 repetitions. Sometimes I prescribe like 3 sets of 5, 3 sets of 10. Just kind of feel it out for yourself and where you get fatigued. Signs that you're doing too much or not giving yourself enough rest are you getting to the position you started in and you're breaking, so you have to shorten the position every time. That's a sign that you're fatiguing and that you should probably take a break and not do as many reps or take a longer break in between sets. But this is supposed to be an endurance exercise more than anything because you need good endurance in your core, especially as we're doing multiple repetitions overhead. So with that being said, we are going to move on to day number 7 tomorrow. And this is kind of going to be putting everything together. So we're going to talk about a few tips, go over a few strategies, and go over a few ways that you can continue working on pressing overhead, but maybe not irritating your shoulder or your back or things like that. So modifications so you can continue working on it while you're working on all these things. So stay tuned for that, and we will see you tomorrow.